you sign, but you're quite visionary, you know, to make it by August 1st, given
good timing.
Expired, yeah.
Without a doubt.
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
There we go.
Okay.
I want the legislators to know these are very inexpensive pens.
We will cherish it though. A memento.
Well, I want to begin by commending Senator Newman, Representative Barrett, Representative Gauthier, and Senator Reinhardt, who couldn't be here today, for their foresight in enacting this legislation, and as underscored by what occurred yesterday in Duluth. You know, from what I was informed, this gentleman who operates it, who doesn't even live in Minnesota, comes across the border and, you know, preys, P-R-E-Y-S, on our young people. And, you know, we've already had one incident in Minnesota known where a young person died because of ingesting synthetic drugs, and someone else going to prison for it. And, you know, 2 lives are ruined, 2 families are ruined. And, you know, this is just very, very dangerous, and it's very irresponsible. Nobody really knows for sure what's in these compounds. Nobody knows exactly what the strength of the particular, and no one knows what kind of impurities are there. So it's extremely dangerous, and I'm really pleased to see yesterday the City of Duluth chief and federal officials. I told the chief I thought he deserved a grade of A for efficiency and effectiveness, and also a grade of A for creativity, because having the SWAT team arrive on a city bus I thought was quite innovative, and definitely a memorable experience for the other riders on the city bus that morning. But, you know, that's what we need. We need to have that kind of enforcement. And this bill, thanks to Senator Newman and Representative Barrett and Representative Gauthier, this bill will make these kinds of offenses a felony in Minnesota rather than a misdemeanor. It will mean that the state can respond more quickly to the kind of response that the gentleman who owns the operation in Duluth said yesterday. You know, we'll just change a couple chemicals, and then we'll, you know, be legal, or at least not illegal. So, you know, and we just really need to recognize the threat to public safety, and also our responsibility to do as much as we can, and even more, to protect especially our young people from harm's way. So with that, let me turn it over to Senator Newman.
Thank you, Governor. Very happy to be here today. I just wanted to mention that this bill reminds me a great deal of the meth bill that we worked on back in 2005, 2006, thereabouts. And at that time, we were dealing with meth, which is, you know, an extremely dangerous chemical and is processed using all sorts of poisons. When this bill was brought to me in the immediate past session, it really did remind me a lot of that meth bill, because these synthetic drugs are very dangerous and they're very poisonous. We really don't know just how badly they are going to affect our citizens, particularly the young people. So I was very, very happy, very pleased to be the chief author of the bill. And I just wanted to mention that what I think makes it unique, this particular bill, is that rather than defining substances by chemical compounds as being illegal, we're trying now to zero in on how they affect the human brain. And I'm going to leave that to a couple of the other presenters to delve into that a little bit. But that's what makes this bill a little different, in that, as the governor mentioned, this guy up in Duluth is now changing the compounds, or changing what he is going to sell. And under this bill, even though they change the compounds, it's going to be illegal. So I wanted to thank the governor for signing the bill. and for his forethought in this. I also wanted to, in particular, I wanted to thank Senator Reinert from Duluth. I worked with Senator Reinert on this bill. He was instrumental, and I wanted to make sure, unfortunately he couldn't be here today, but I wanted to make sure that we recognize his efforts in this. I want to thank the City of Duluth for bringing this bill to us, and the other conferees that sat with us on this bill and got the bill done. Among those would be Representative Barrett.
Thank you. And I want to thank also Governor Dayton as well. I'm Representative Barrett from Chisago County. Really want to thank Governor Dayton for his involvement in this very important public safety issue, and really everyone behind me. You're going to hear from a lot of folks today, all with a slightly different perspective on how this affects our community, but let me give you my perspective. And that is that, first of all, this bill and a version of it came to our House last year, and we signed a version of it into law. But what this bill this year says is we need to keep on top of it, because as we know, the bad people, as bad as they are, they're also very creative. So they want to stay one step ahead of us, and we can't let that happen. So as you know from around the country, this is an emerging drug. It's already here. People have died already. People have had serious health risks and issues because of it. We know about the incident in Florida where a guy was actually chewing off the face of someone else because of the drastic effects and what the synthetic drugs do. I want to start, though, by talking about a couple misperceptions. One of which is that, I'm sure all of you know this, but bath salts, okay? The word bath salts has nothing to do with taking a bath. And I think a lot of people in the public still don't realize that. And so that's one thing. It's just a term that people use to try to get around the idea that it really is for human consumption. People really do buy it to get high, even though on the package it says not for human consumption. Bath salts, not for taking a bath. Second of all, the term synthetic marijuana really is a misnomer. The correct term is synthetic cannabinoids, and the reason that's important is because synthetic marijuana really has nothing to do with marijuana. It could be 10 to 100 times more powerful than marijuana. Has nothing to do with it. It's similar in its chemical composition, but really it's much more powerful. And that's what these drugs are. They're synthetic. We don't know what they are. We don't know how they affect the brain over the long term. We know they're bad, though. We know they have drastic effects on the brain. And that's why this issue is so important, and how we have to communicate to the public what these are and why they're so dangerous. So I have a couple messages for people. One is for the young kids who might think that this is an opportunity to do something they've never done before. These things are so dangerous, so drastic, and they really can lead to death. So it just isn't worth it. You should not do it. To moms and dads, I want to tell you, find out what synthetic drugs are. Google the term synthetic drug. Google bath salt. Google the word spice. Find out what they are, so then if they're in your household, if they're in your community, you know what they are. You can communicate to the proper authorities and your family about what they are and get help when you need them. Third thing is to those people that are still selling these. A lot of people last year who were selling them quit because they're now illegal, and we're doing some good things to try to prosecute those that still don't abide by the law. But those that are, it's now a felony. You're going to have to make a choice. Before last year, you had to make a choice between a penalty and still selling them and getting your profits. This year, you're going to have to make a choice. Do you want to go to prison for 5 years or not? That's your choice, but we will put you in jail. Thank you very much.
I'm Representative Gauthier from Duluth. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Newman and Representative Barrett for being chief authors of this bill. This is an example of bipartisan support of addressing an issue critical to Minnesotans. I want to talk a little bit about Duluth has been in the forefront of this fight. It has been a problem in our community. It has affected not only individual lives, but it affects our healthcare system, because on every given night, there are many people ending up in the ER taking resources because they're having negative consequences to these drugs. It has affected our business community in that people are avoiding the downtown area because of the head shop in Duluth. And I want to tell Mr. Carlson, starting Wednesday, it's a felony. And I know that Chief Ramsey and the Duluth Police Department are going to do everything in their power to make sure that the law is enforced and that you will no longer be in business when it comes to bath salts and synthetic marijuana if we have anything to say about it. Yesterday, there was a raid in Duluth, and I'm sure the chief will talk about that a little bit. But Mr. Carlson's response was, we'll just tweak it and avoid the law. I think this law makes that harder to do, and hopefully that'll be one of the first prosecutions that the state does, is dealing with the head shop in Duluth. I would also like to extend my thanks to Chief Ramsey in coordinating the raid yesterday at Last Place on Earth. He did, as usual, outstanding work, and I'd like to introduce to you now Chief Ramsey.
My name is Gordon Ramsey. I'm the Chief of Police in Duluth. I too would like to thank the Governor, Representative Barrett, Senator Newman, Senator Reinert, and Representative Gauthier, because they are bringing this chess game to an end. And on the table has been many people's lives, as well as the economic vitality of a business community. We feel strongly that this law will give us a tool that we need to help better address the problem with synthetic drugs. This in-your-face issue in Duluth it's been clear to me that the citizens have had it. They have said, we want you to do something about this. We now have a law that will greatly benefit the citizens and the police, our effort in addressing this drug. There's not a day that goes by that we're not dealing with issues in the area surrounding that business. As a matter of fact, we have to assign an officer permanently just to that block to ensure that things are kept somewhat normal. We've seen an increase in the behavior, agitation among those that are using it, as well as depression, suicidal thoughts, as well as many of the other things that go along with using this drug, such as sickness. Businesses are frequently having to clean vomit and other bodily fluids up from their storefronts near this business, and they've had it. And this will hopefully end this chess game. And again, I want to thank the legislature and the governor for coming together in this statewide effort to address this major problem for us. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Rich Janik, Sheriff in Hennepin County. First off, I also would like to thank the governor and the legislature and Chief Ramsey and the other folks standing behind us on behalf of the Minnesota Sheriff's Association and the men and women in law enforcement across the state. This is a big day for us. On August 1st, this law takes effect, and we do plan on enforcing it to the best of our abilities. By passing this law, you have helped deputies, police officers, and all the law enforcement protect our communities and our young people, and that's really what's important here. Today sends a clear message that these substances are not safe, and that with this new law in effect, they are not legal in the state of Minnesota. Because these drugs are purchased at a local retail shop or sometimes on the internet, we think that kids might think or be more inclined to think that they're safe to use. And the fact of the matter is that they are not. The ingredients are not listed on the packaging. They're not regulated by the FDA. Teenagers and other people who use these drugs don't really know what chemicals are in them, as you've heard this morning. The packages state caution. Use only as directed. This product is not for human consumption. And this is what we're talking about here. I'm great at bringing show and tell because I wanted to show you truly what it is that Chief Ramsey finds up in Duluth, Minnesota, what we found out in Rogers, Minnesota, just a few miles here from our state's capital. This is what the young people are going into these head shops or these local businesses to purchase, and what on August 1st will be illegal in the state of Minnesota. So thank you to the legislature, thank you to the governor, thank you to all of you for putting this out to the public. They were right about talking to the kids, talking to parents, talking with the young people, letting them know the dangers that are involved with this and hopefully putting a stop to it. I'll leave this up here. I'll leave it on the desk. You're welcome to come up and photograph it, but I am taking it with me at the end of the day. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Frank Dolish. I'm the lab director of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Laboratory. I think that this law will give us the tools that we need to deal with these synthetic drugs. Since the bill was passed, we've actually had 2 more deaths, one in North Dakota and one in Minnesota, along with 5 overdoses of another compound that isn't directly covered by this law, but because the law has, for the pharmacy board, expedited rulemaking, we will be able to cover that compound in a very short period of time. In that particular case, the people that were involved in this are being charged federally, and the chemist that had made this stuff was actually melting it down and mixing it with chocolate and selling it to the kids that way. So I think this is a fantastic law. It'll give us the tools we need. I'll let Cody Weinberg from the Pharmacy Board go next.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Cody Weinberg, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Board of Pharmacy, the state agency whose primary job is actually to regulate the profession of pharmacy and the distribution of legal drugs in the state. But over the last half dozen years, we've become very involved with issues of prescription drug abuse, both the abuse of prescription drugs, which itself is a problem, and the abuse of designer drugs, which we're talking about today. Board staff assisted the legislators who are here today and their staff in drafting the legislation that the governor has signed. Among the provisions in that bill, as Mr. Dolish just mentioned, is one that allows the board to use what's known as expedited rulemaking authority. We intend to vigorously but judiciously use that authority so that when the board becomes aware of new substances that are abusable, that have no legitimate medical use, that are found in this state and have been found to do harm, and we know from what Mr. Dolish said that people have already died, the board will use that authority to place a drug like that into Schedule I, therefore making it illegal to sell or possess in the state. The board will also continue to take part in efforts like this to inform the public of just how dangerous these drugs are. That's been the consistent message from the board and the consistent analogy that I use, and what I would encourage the people who are tempted to use these drugs to think about is when they're using these drugs, they're essentially playing a form of chemical Russian roulette. There is no quality control. These drugs are not manufactured in FDA-approved facilities. You do not know from batch to batch what you're going to get. You don't know if it's the same drug. You don't know if it's the same potency. So you could use a particular product that looks identical 6 different times. The first 5 times that you use it, you might have absolutely no problem. The 6th time is when you might end up in the ER with a seizure or hallucinations or with a cardiac arrest. So we're going to work with the governor, with the legislators, with law enforcement, and with prosecutors to try to thwart the plans of the people who would imperil other people's lives for the sake of profit. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm Paul Bowmaster. I'm with the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. I'm the president this year, and on behalf of all prosecutors, I'd like to thank the governor and the state legislature for getting this bill done this last session. And the rest of my colleagues up here that I work with will understand this has been a concern of prosecutors throughout the state of Minnesota and a frustration of prosecutors and probably the BCA lab as well. When we would ask them, what is this? Is this a scheduled controlled substance? And we'd get the answer, maybe, or I don't know. There's nothing in the books that show what this chemical is, but it is similar to. It made it difficult to successfully prosecute cases when we couldn't identify the substance or that it wasn't on the schedule. Given the ability now to fast track, as been pointed out already by past speakers, we will have that ability when we start seeing these things cropping up on the West Coast, the East Coast, or the Gulf Coast, to get those onto our schedules immediately, or at least in an expedited fashion, in a way that will allow us to prosecute by the time those drugs make it here to the state of Minnesota. And again, I'd just like to thank the governor for signing this bill. And starting August 1st, I'm hopeful that we will see many, many more successful prosecutions that will shut down those tobacco shops that are selling this and anyone else selling this to our children. Thank you.
I apologize, and I'm glad I approved the grant money for the County Attorneys Association last year, so. Yeah. We'll respond to questions on this particular topic, and then after that, I'll respond to questions on any other topic.
I'd like to know from the pharmacy board how quickly you can act to make a new version illegal, and also from maybe the chief about if there's a gap in here, how you would handle that. That's something new coming up.
Even with the expedited rulemaking process, it will take 3 to 4 months, unfortunately. Without the expedited rulemaking process, if as few as 25 people request it, we would have to hold a hearing before an administrative law judge. That can add some additional time to it. It depends on the schedule at the Office of Administrative Hearings. They're normally very good and very quick, but they do have other work to do. Also, a hearing process automatically triggers additional comment periods that really the OAH cannot waive, and so it adds probably another 2 or 3 months. So, but I think the board can act within 90 to 120 days.
And if the chief would talk about how you deal with the gap in here, if they're going to keep changing the formulation.
Well, there's a couple things that we're doing. First off, a little bit about yesterday was talked about regarding the search warrant there. We're working with our federal partners to see what federal laws are going to apply, and we will continue to evaluate the state law and what's going on with the federal case and take the appropriate course from there. We're also looking at, the state has a nuisance injunction law that we're also examining, bringing forward a nuisance abatement civil suit that is being worked on as well.
Is it possible that these formulas can change so quickly that even with this new authority, the pharmacy board can't keep up?
Well, there will be a lag time, no doubt about it. This isn't going to be a, an instant August 1st solution. However, we know that there will be some time, but eventually it will work. And our hope is that most people will voluntarily comply with the new law. We're spending a lot of resources on this incident in this business, and we hope he'll just comply.
This law seems to apply strictly to trafficking of these substances. What's the current level of offense for possession if you're caught with one of these substances?
It's a misdemeanor.
Does that need to change as well?
The focus of this law was more for those that are engaging in the sale, not simple possession.
And once this all goes into effect, how frequently would we see busts or something similar? I mean, is this every month, twice a year? Any sense of that?
Yeah, well, in our case, obviously we've got these cases going. Sooner or later, there's going to be some consequences at the court level, and that's where everything's going to come together.
Yeah, if I could just comment on the idea of the gap between when the new drugs get out there and when the Board of Pharmacy could make them through rulemaking illegal. This law this year actually supports the law we passed last year. And the last year's law created the concept of an analog. And the analog concept, Dr. Weiberg, I'm sure, could communicate that better than I could. But if it looks, acts, smells, tastes, and performs like a Schedule I drug, it is illegal. And that's the law we passed last year. What this law this year does, it supports that by actually adding to the list of illegal synthetic drugs about 250 of them. And that's where we have the idea of adding them sequentially as they come out. But the concept of an analog that we created last year should already make those illegal.
So this law does nothing?
No, this law this year does 3 particular things. It makes synthetic cannabinoids a felony. It was a gross misdemeanor. It adds over 250 drugs to the schedule so that county attorneys can have more confidence when they prosecute these folks for selling these things. And it allows the Board of Pharmacy to do expedited rulemaking to make future drugs illegal.
So
3 things.
250 plus the others, if there's something that looks, tastes, whatever, like them, they would be illegal under the analog last year.
Correct. Correct.
Is the Board of Pharmacy, when it gets to be able to make this rulemaking, is it just on synthetic drugs, or are they going to be able to branch out into other activities?
The law that grants us expedited rulemaking authority basically says if we identify a substance of any sort that has no legitimate medical use, that has a potential for abuse, that even if it had a medical use, it couldn't be safely used under medical supervision, and if it harms people, we can put it into Schedule 1. Now, that's primarily going to be these synthetic designer drugs. What the board is not going to be able to do under this new expedited rulemaking is, if the FDA approves a drug, we're not going to be able to put that into Schedule 1 based on this. And in fact, if the FDA approves a drug, it works with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. If those two agencies think the drug is abusable, it has an acceptable medical use, but it still needs to be controlled. Instead of being in Schedule 1, it'll be placed in Schedules 2 through 5. There's a separate provision in the law that directs the board to align the state schedules with the federal schedules. So if the concern is about the board trying to put drugs and make drugs illegal that have legitimate medical uses that are FDA approved, this law does not do anything like that.
That's what I was trying to figure out was, does this give you the ability, obviously you saw meth explosion, 5 to 10 years ago, where the legislature and Congress were trying to catch up and the FDA were trying to catch up with that. Does that give you the ability, if there's a second coming of a meth or something like that, to act more quickly than, what would normally go through the sausage making that happens in this place?
Well, if there was something related to meth, and it had no legitimate medical use, yes, we could use the expedited rulemaking authority to put it into the schedules.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. I just wanted to add one more thought in terms of how this law is supposed to work. And perhaps Mr. Dulce from the BCA could help me, but what is intended here is to allow the BCA to come in and testify as expert witnesses in a drug trial, that the analogs that we passed last year and the new compound that is being formulated that is not now on the books are affecting, in effect, the human brain in the same way, and therefore it is an illegal compound. Mr. Dulce, have I got that kind of close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone up there know how many other states have a kind of a felony level, either roughly or precisely how many states have this?
Sure, I can answer that. I've done some research on this issue, and I would say about 20 to 30. I don't have a particular number in mind, but 20 to 30. I think Kansas is one that we've looked at for their statute, and we've looked at other states to kind of model good legislation after.
If this could, a lot of times these border communities find a lot of migration.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota are doing. Cody.
I know for sure that North Dakota has a law that's very similar to ours. They tried to deal with the synthetic cannabinoids through their board of pharmacy. Their board of pharmacy was actually sued. They had to go to the legislature, and the law that they adopted for synthetic cannabinoids is very similar to the law that we adopted. I am not sure about South Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin.
Time for one last question on this topic. If you have one, not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.